What's going on, everyone? It's going to be our summary markets week 95. We don't have a whole lot to go over on the watch list side of things, but we are going to talk about SPY, Qs, gold, oil, USD, JPY, Bitcoin, Ethereum, as always. So let's get started with SPY. Chart's getting a little messy here, so I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. We had a fib target at around 466, 467, and then around 473, 475. We hit most of those targets. So we hit the 466, 467, and then we didn't hit these. But we're going to go ahead and delete this for now just to clean things up. We're going to get rid of this, get rid of the top as well here. You did see that gap around, what was that, 466 that did get filled last week. So that was pretty clean, but that actually ended up being the top. So you pulled back, filled the gap, and then you topped out right on that gap. We actually filled another gap as well to the downside. So the gap around 451 was also filled. So we can go ahead and remove these because those have been filled. We do have another gap around 447 and then one around 442. So if we do push lower this week, those would be the obvious targets. If it gets a little crazy and starts to really sell off, we have another gap around 435. Okay, the OTS trail has flipped red. It also has a VWAP around 465. So you do want to push above that level before we start to get bullish. The next level would be around 471 if you do push that VWAP. And then we're obviously looking at all-time high around 473. If it gets below the 50, just look for those gap fills, 447, 442. On Qs, it's basically the same thing. You popped up last week. There wasn't a gap there, but it was that previous all-time high around 401. So you did hit that. That acted as resistance back below the OTS trail now. The OTS trail is still green on Qs. You do have the monthly VWAP around 396, but the OTS trail has not flipped red yet. So you're not technically in a downtrend until that flips red. You are bouncing off the 50-day. So if you can stay above the 50-day, you're going to want to look for around 392 and then 396. Below the 50-day, you want to look for around 372 and then 369. As far as gold goes, you did break this downtrend, came back to retest it, hit all of our upper levels. You have a ton of resistance above you, though. You have the 50, the pivot, the 200, the trail, the VWAP. So basically anywhere from 1792 all the way to 1822, it's all resistance. Okay. If it gets back below the trend, look at the pivot around 1750, and then you're looking for around 1733. Back above the pivot, you want to look for the trail around 1816, and then the VWAP around 1820. Oil is a little weak here, so you are bouncing off that daily pivot, but you did fail the 200. If you lose the pivot, probably go back down to that low around 62, 61.50. If you lose that, then it's getting really bad. Probably could go back down to like 52 to 55, but probably not going to happen next week. You do have a small bull diff coming in on the daily. So if you do get above 200, the 200 EMA, you should be looking for around 71 and then 75. USD, JPY, testing a pivot right now around that 112 level. If you do fail that, 112.76, there is a pivot around 111.94. So that 112 level will be a little bit of resistance. You do have a slight Momo pinch bearish here, so it is shifting to a downtrend. If it does get above the trail and the, no, I guess it is the trail, yeah, trail and monthly VWAP around 114.25, then it looks pretty bullish into that 115 level. Bitcoin, so we had a little bit of fun on Bitcoin this week. Let's go ahead and go back to our other chart. We've been talking about these support levels on 52.7, 52.3, 50,200. Basically, this whole area right here was kind of the area we've been talking about for the past few weeks, where I told you guys if you were looking for like a long-term dollar cost average area where you can start picking up bids, that's basically where you would have bid, around that 52.7 to 48.7 area. If you do lose that 45.7, we did wick it, but it didn't really lose it. If it loses that level, the next zone you want to be thinking about bidding is around 40,000 down to 31.4. So kind of in between this area, as we saw here, there wasn't a whole lot of support. You could just sweep right through that level. It did have kind of a point of origin around here, which almost was the bottom to the tick. But besides that, not a whole lot of support in that area. So you can even see like on the volume profile, it doesn't really start to peak out until you get down to like the 39.5 area. So if you do lose that 45.7, probably go down to that 39.5. So keep an eye on that. If we do reclaim the pivot around 52.7, look for that pivot that sent us down around 58.1. Ethereum tested that level that we gave you guys around 35.77. You also had the 200 EMA, kind of front ran it a little bit, just like we did back here, around that 33.60. But if it does break above, or sorry, we already bounced off that pivot, but if it does break above the 50, you do want to see the OTS trail around 44.30, and then you have that little sell pressure on that tweezer top around 47, which would be the obvious target. If you do lose these pivots, probably going to go back down to that pivot around 35.76. Another level to keep an eye on would be the monthly, let's clean up my chart here for a second, the monthly pivot at 577. You did lose the pivot on the November candle. I think we talked about this in the last summary markets. If not, we definitely talked about it in the Discord. I was talking about how you had that kind of tweezer top here, and then you failed the monthly pivot, and then immediately, as soon as it started in December, you started selling off from that pivot. So that was the obvious sign in hindsight. If you guys didn't see that, if we do get back above that monthly pivot above 57.7, it looks a lot better. But in the meantime, not a whole lot of monthly support until you get down into that 40,000 area. We don't have any monthly pivots on Ethereum up here. I think weekly, yeah, we had a weekly one. That was the one that we bounced off of, the one around 35.80. So that's still very obvious support, and the weekly trail around that same level until they're broken. But all right, that is the summary markets. Let's move on to the watch list. Like I said, there's not really a whole lot on my watch list. I still have all these old names that we were looking at last week, but because the market is so volatile right now, I'm not looking at picking up any individual names. I've just mainly been scalping ES, using that new bot strategy that I posted in Discord, mainly just using the VWAP and the 3-minute bot to take some scalps. So that's what I'm going to be planning on doing for the rest of the week. And what I'm looking for on ES is if we lose that pivot, you're looking for that 44.77 area or that 44.20 area. We can go back to the other Fibonacci that we drew earlier this week, where it was the first sell-off candle. We pulled back to retest the 618, and then we sold off. The first trigger was 4559. The first target was 4507 and 4490. Those were hit already. So the next target area would be 4436 and 4418 if it can get below that 4490. Okay, so longer term, those are the levels you're looking for. And then shorter term, kind of the same areas, around 4420 to 4402. As of right now, we are holding the pivot and the 50-day, so it doesn't look too bad just yet. The things that I'm looking to add on to, I do have Altria puts on MO. I have long-term leaps, not puts. I have calls. If it does start to nuke, I will add on to those calls. Right now, we're actually positive on those, so I will not be adding on to those. I was actually hoping it sold off a little bit more so we could double up our contracts, but as of right now, we're not getting that. It's actually reacting pretty bullishly to this sell-off. But if this does sell off, maybe this bearish channel does continue, I will be looking to add on to that position. Uranium, I'm still holding shares on this. I've got plenty of room to add. I am going to look to add to this position around the 200-day, around 22, or if it gives us a daily buy on the bot, which, let's see. Yeah, so we've been in a sell since like the 28 range. So if this does give a buy on the bot, I'll probably add on to my shares as well. Wolf, I don't know if I'm going to add on to this one because we don't have a massive position on this, but we are underwater quite a bit. I think we're down about like 20% or something. Yeah, about 20%. So the first set of shares that I bought on this for my long-term portfolio, they are definitely red. And I'm debating on if I want to just cut them for a loss or add on to them and kind of make my average a lot lower. I've got plenty of room to add. I'm mostly cash on pretty much all of my accounts right now. So I definitely have room to add. But I don't know if this has more potential to the downside because you are currently sweeping the all-time low. So this could honestly go to like 16, and that would be pretty brutal if I added here. So not sure if I'm going to add to this yet. Just keep an eye on Discord. I'll let you know. PayPal, I'm definitely going to add, but I really want to see this weekly 200. You're very close. I will front run it a little bit. So if it wants to give me like 175, 173-ish, I'm going to double up my shares. These are very long-term shares. I will not take a loss on PayPal. I will add on to this for years to come. So I'm not too worried about this, but we're looking at the 200 around 168. That would be the obvious target, but might have to front run it a little bit. Coinbase, I'm not going to add to these shares, I don't think. We bought these on IPO, very, very small amount. So not too worried about this. You did lose the 2 anchored VWAPs and the 50-day, so a little weak. Could go back down to the pivot if Bitcoin continues to sell off. Just look for that 233 area. It doesn't look too good until you get back above like 311, to be honest. I did take some Lotto shares on IMNM for the COVID play. They are down a little bit. I think we bought them around 17.50, so we're down about $1 a share. It did pull back to retest that gap. It was a gap fill. The problem with this is they have a vaccine they're working on for the new variant of COVID. And when the COVID headlines were coming out and people were panicking about the new variant, they were doing very well. But as soon as they started coming out and saying, oh, the new variant's not that bad, they started to sell off. They said they will have definitive results on their new variant by January, on their new vaccine. So we should know pretty soon if they are going to get approved. If they do get approved, this is a very big risk reward play. You could see 28. You could even see like 40 on this thing, honestly. It's like the new Myrna. So keep an eye on that. Moving on to big tech, Microsoft did hit our lower target around 325. Our next lower target would be the 50-day and the lower level around 316. That was almost hit as well. If you do lose those levels, look for the gap fill around 311. Back above 330, look for 338. Apple did hit almost all of our targets. The only target that we had left was 177. You are pulling back to retest the pivot, so it's okay for now. If you lose the pivot, look for around 158 and the OTS trail around 156. You can use these targets again as well as the 177 target if we do push higher. Facebook getting a little hairy here. I do have shares on this. I actually was planning on adding on this level. I did not see that it tested that level, so we did miss our add. If it does retest that level, I might add some shares. If it goes below that level, probably to like 290, 280, I will definitely add some shares. So we're about break even. Actually, where do we add? We're a little bit low on these. I think we started buying these around 320. So we are a little red on those, but it's Facebook. I'm not too worried about that. Netflix, you hit our lower target around 612. Next lower target is 590 and then 573. If it breaks the 50, look for the trail around 660 and then 687. Amazon hitting our lower target on 34.17 and 33.43. If it breaks the pivot, look for 32.64 and then 32.03. Break the pivot to the upside, 35.50 and then 35.90. Tesla hitting our lower target at 1041. Next lower target is the 50-day around 980, and then the gap fill around 910. Get back above 1120. Look for 1170 and then 1220. All right, guys, that is the summary of markets. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you enjoyed the content. Make sure to subscribe if you guys are new here. I do stream 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. So I will be seeing you guys tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. See you then.